The day I bought that abandoned lakefront mansion, I felt like I'd just stepped into a dream. The sun was setting behind the trees, the water shimmered like melted gold, and the mansion, though half swallowed by vines and time, stood proud and silent, like it was waiting for someone to bring it back to life. The locals called it the Walker Estate. The realtor told me it had been empty for more than 40 years, something about the owner disappearing after a fire in one of the guest houses. I didn't care about the rumors. I was tired of city noise, traffic, and cramped apartments. I wanted space, peace, and a view that didn't involve skyscrapers. When I first set foot on that cracked driveway and saw the massive oak doors at the entrance, I knew this was it. This was home. The price was a steal. The realtor said most people didn't want to deal with restoring an old property, but I'd spent years in construction and renovation. Fixing things was my kind of therapy. The structure was solid, the foundation strong. Sure, the paint was peeling, the roof leaked in 3 places, and raccoons had turned the attic into their personal kingdom, but that didn't scare me. It excited me. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Every morning I woke up before sunrise, threw on my work boots, and got to it. I cleared out trash, ripped up rotted floorboards, and replaced windows that had been shattered for decades. My friends thought I was crazy. My family said I was wasting my savings. But I could see something they couldn't, the potential behind all that dust. It took months of sweat, money, and countless trips to the hardware store, but piece by piece, the mansion came back to life. The grand staircase, which had been missing half its steps, shone again under fresh polish. The marble floors, buried under dirt, gleamed white once more. I replaced the old chandeliers, restored the massive fireplace, and even rebuilt the porch overlooking the lake. The view from there was like a painting, blue water stretching endlessly, framed by pine trees, the sky glowing orange every evening. I'd sit there after long days, beer in hand, watching ducks glide across the water, feeling like the luckiest man alive. It wasn't just a house anymore, it was my masterpiece. The town started to notice, too. People passing by would slow down to stare. Some would even stop and tell me stories about the mansion's past, how it used to host parties in the 60s, how it was once the pride of the lakefront community. I felt proud knowing I was giving it new life. I thought I'd finally escaped all the nonsense of modern living, no noisy neighbors, no drama, no city stress. I couldn't have been more wrong. The peace ended the day she showed up. I was repainting the front gate when I noticed a white SUV pull up. Out stepped a woman in a navy blue blazer, heels too fancy for gravel, and a clipboard clutched to her chest. She walked toward me with the kind of confidence only people with power, or those who think they have power, carry. "Good afternoon," she said, her tone crisp. "I'm Karen with the Lakeside Homeowners Association. We've noticed some activity at the old Walker property." I blinked, sweat dripping from my forehead. Yeah," I said, leaning on my paintbrush. "I bought it 6 months ago. Finally done with the restoration." Her eyebrows shot up like I'd said something offensive. "You bought it?" she repeated, as if the idea was impossible. "Yes, ma'am," I said slowly. "It's mine now." She smiled, but not in a nice way. "Well, that's interesting. You see, this property is part of the Lakeside HOA. According to our records, you owe back dues since 1974. For a second, I thought she was joking. I actually laughed. "You can't be serious. I bought the property this year. It was abandoned for decades." She didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. "Doesn't matter. The property itself has obligations. Dues, fees, maintenance assessments, all of which have accumulated for nearly 50 years. You'll need to settle that before we can approve your occupancy." Approve my occupancy? That's when I started realizing she wasn't just a busybody, she thought she had control here. I crossed my arms. Lady, this property was auctioned off by the county. There was no mention of any HOA. And I don't owe anything that started before I was born. Her expression didn't change. Sir, the Lakeside Association has maintained this community for generations. The Walker estate falls within our boundaries, and our financial records show unpaid dues since the 1970s. If you're the new owner, you inherit the balance. My jaw tightened. And how much is this supposed balance? She glanced at her clipboard like she'd been waiting to say it. $48,327, plus interest. I stared at her, speechless. You've got to be kidding me. I assure you, Mr. Reed, I said. Mr. Reed, she continued smoothly, this isn't a joke. If you fail to bring your account current, we may need to escalate the matter legally. I felt my blood pressure spike. You can take your clipboard and your made-up dues and get off my property. Her smile vanished. She took a slow step back but kept her tone icy. I'll be in touch. The HOA takes non-compliance very seriously. Then she turned, heels crunching on the gravel, and drove off. I stood there, paintbrush still in hand, heart pounding. For the first time since I bought that mansion, it didn't feel like home. It felt like I just stepped into a fight I didn't sign up for. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch watching the lake, the moon reflecting on the water, trying to make sense of what happened. I didn't owe anyone anything. I'd done everything legally. But the way that woman talked, the way she carried herself, it felt like she believed she owned this place more than I did. I told myself she'd go away. That it was just a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew better. I could feel it in my gut. Karen wasn't done with me. And the so-called Lakeside HOA? They were about to make my life a living nightmare. 2 days after that strange visit from the HOA woman, I woke up to find another letter taped to my door. The paper looked official, embossed seal, fancy logo, and all the fake importance they could cram onto one page. It was from the so-called Lakeside Homeowners Association. This time, it wasn't just a notice. It was a final demand for payment. According to them, I owed nearly $50,000 in unpaid dues and penalties, stretching back to 1974, plus administrative fees and legal preparation charges. It looked ridiculous, like something out of a bad movie. Still, there was something about the tone that made my blood boil. It wasn't a request. It was a threat. They talked about liens, asset claims, and further action. All for a property that had been empty longer than I'd been alive. I tossed the letter onto my kitchen counter and paced the floor. I'd dealt with scammers before, but this felt different. Too coordinated. Too confident. I decided to get answers. First stop, the county records office. The clerk there, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses hanging off her nose, helped me pull the property files. I told her the whole story as she clicked through her computer. When she finally looked up, she frowned. There hasn't been an active HOA connected to the Walker estate since 1983, she said. The original Lakeside Association was dissolved after a legal dispute. They were sued for mismanagement and lost their charter. No active association's been registered since. I leaned on the counter. Then who the hell are these people? She shrugged. Could be someone trying to bring it back unofficially. We've had folks try that before. Usually it's just a handful of homeowners playing power games. That made me even angrier. Some neighborhood busybody club pretending to be a legal authority, and trying to extort me for 50 grand? Not on my watch. I spent the rest of that day digging deeper. I looked through public databases, tax records, property maps, anything I could find. Sure enough, the so-called Lakeside HOA wasn't listed anywhere as a registered entity. No federal ID, no local business license, nothing. It was a ghost. A name without a legal body. I could have ignored it right there, but part of me wanted to confront them. To see how far they'd go with their fake act. So I decided to show up at their next meeting. I found the details printed at the bottom of their last letter: monthly HOA board meeting, Thursday, 6 p.m., Lakeside Community Center. The moment I walked in, every head turned. About a dozen people sat in folding chairs, sipping coffee and shuffling papers. At the head of the table sat Karen, the same woman who'd shown up at my door, clipboard and all. Her smile flickered when she saw me, but she tried to keep her composure. "Mr. Reed," she said coolly. "This is a closed meeting." "Yeah, I figured," I said, walking right up to the table. "But since you people keep trespassing on my life, I thought I'd return the favor." A murmur rippled through the group. I pulled a folder from my jacket and dropped it on the table with a loud slap. "County records," I said. "Your HOA doesn't exist. It was dissolved over 40 years ago. You've got no legal standing to demand money from me, or anyone else." Karen's jaw tightened. "Mr. Reed, please calm down. We're only trying to maintain order and quality within our community." "Community?" I said, laughing. "Lady, this place has been half abandoned for decades. You're not maintaining anything but your own ego." A few of the other board members shifted awkwardly. One older man looked down at his papers, clearly uncomfortable. Karen forced a smile. "If you refuse to cooperate, Mr. Reed, we'll have no choice but to escalate matters through our legal department." "Great," I said. "Make sure your fake lawyer brings your fake registration papers when you do." I walked out before she could respond. I could feel their eyes on my back, but I didn't care. I'd made my point, or so I thought. 2 days later, another letter came. This one wasn't from the HOA. It was from an actual law firm. A real one. It claimed to represent the Lakeside Homeowners Association in a civil case. They were threatening to file a lien against my property if I didn't pay the amount owed. Now it was serious. I couldn't just brush it off. A lien meant they could potentially lock up my property, my home, until the debt was resolved. It didn't matter that the debt was fake. If they filed it in court, I'd have to fight it legally. I made a few phone calls of my own. My cousin Mark was a real estate attorney, and when I explained everything, he nearly laughed out loud. "Dude, they're bluffing," he said. "If the original HOA dissolved, they can't legally resurrect it without filing for reinstatement. And if they're using the same name, that's fraud. So what do I do?" I asked. "Let me handle it," he said. "We'll dig up everything. If they try to file anything, we'll crush it in court." I felt a bit of relief, but the tension didn't leave me. For days, I'd catch Karen's SUV parked across the lake, engine idling. Sometimes, I'd find small flyers stuck to my mailbox: HOA violation notice, unregistered renovation, unpaid assessment. It was harassment, plain and simple. One night, I even heard voices outside. When I stepped onto the porch, I saw 2 men in reflective vests walking along my fence line with flashlights. "Hey!" I shouted. "Who are you?" One of them looked up. "HOA security check. You're on private property." I yelled. They didn't even flinch. They just walked off toward the road. I called the sheriff's department the next morning. The deputy who came out was a friendly guy, probably mid-30s, who took one look at the letters and shook his head. "We've had a few reports about this group," he said. "They're not official. They've been trying to muscle homeowners around the lake. But nobody's ever pushed back legally." "Well, they picked the wrong guy this time," I said. The deputy chuckled. "I'll file a report, but if you really want to shut them down, go through the court. Paper beats clipboard." That line stuck with me. Paper beats clipboard. Over the next week, my cousin Mark and I gathered everything, the dissolution documents, county registry proof, and copies of every threatening letter they'd sent. When their lawyer finally filed the lien claim, we were ready. My attorney sent an immediate countermotion, challenging the HOA's legal existence. The judge set a hearing date. I didn't know if Karen thought I'd fold or panic, but she clearly wasn't expecting me to fight back. The morning of the hearing, I saw her outside the courthouse with her lawyer, looking smug and confident. I walked past them without a word, holding my own folder tight. Inside, the judge went through the paperwork calmly. Karen's lawyer began talking about community standards and long-standing obligations, but the judge stopped him mid-sentence. "Counsel," he said, "I see no record of your client being a legally recognized entity." The lawyer stammered. "Your Honor, the Lakeside HOA was dissolved in 1983, the judge interrupted, reading from the file I'd submitted. "Without reinstatement, it cannot collect dues or enforce contracts. This case is dismissed." Karen's face went white. She opened her mouth to speak, but the judge wasn't finished. "And furthermore," he said, "any continued attempts to collect under this name could be considered fraud." The gavel came down. Case closed. As we walked out of the courtroom, I caught Karen's eyes. She looked smaller now, her confidence gone. I didn't say a word, just nodded once before turning away. It should have been over right there, but in my gut, I knew she wasn't going to let it go that easily. Still, I felt the power shift. The lakefront mansion that once stood silent and forgotten was mine again, legally, fully, and without their interference. For the first time in months, I could breathe again, knowing the truth was finally on my side. 2 weeks later, the HOA nightmare hit full force. I thought ignoring their letter would make them go away, but they were like wolves, they only smelled blood. It started small. A yellow slip appeared taped to my gate, notice of violation, non-payment of outstanding dues. I laughed it off at first. Then another one showed up the next day. Then another. Soon they were taping them to my door, my mailbox, even my truck. Every one was signed by the same name, Karen M. Fields, president of the Lakeside Homeowners Association. I finally decided to drive to their so-called office. It turned out to be a rented suite in a strip mall next to a nail salon. I walked in and was hit with the smell of old coffee and printer ink. A receptionist looked up nervously. "Can I help you?" "Yeah," I said, trying to stay calm. "I need to speak with Karen Fields. I'm Reed, the guy who bought the old Walker mansion." Her eyes widened. "Oh," she said softly, like she'd just seen a ghost. "One moment, please." A minute later, Karen emerged from her office wearing that same tight smile. "Mr. Reed," she said smoothly. "I was expecting you." "You've been plastering my property with notices," I said. "I want to get this straight, how the hell do I owe you money for a house that was abandoned for 40 years? She clasped her hands behind her back. "As I've stated before, the HOA governs all properties within the Lakeside District. Your mansion falls within those boundaries. The dues never stopped accruing." "So you're telling me," I said slowly, "that you expect me to pay for services that were never provided to anyone, because no one lived there?" She nodded like a schoolteacher explaining a simple rule. "Yes. It's the responsibility of the property owner to remain current on all dues, regardless of occupancy. You should have verified that before purchasing." There was nothing about an HOA in my paperwork. I snapped. "The county sold me this house. Not you." Her expression didn't change. "That's not our problem. Failure to pay will result in a lien on the property, followed by foreclosure if unresolved." My blood boiled. "You can't foreclose on me. I just finished restoring that place with my own hands." "We can," she said calmly, "and we will." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. You're out of your mind if you think I'm paying a dime for phantom fees. You and your little board can take your papers and shove them in the lake. I turned to walk out, but her voice followed me, sharp and deliberate. You'll regret that attitude, Mr. Reed. We always win. For the next few days, I noticed strange things. Cars I didn't recognize parked near my driveway at odd hours. Someone left a dead fish on my porch with a note, "Pay what you owe." My trash cans were knocked over repeatedly, and once, my mail was missing entirely. It wasn't random, I knew it was them. The HOA wasn't just some board of nosy neighbors. They were a pack of bullies who believed their rules gave them power. Well, they picked the wrong guy this time. I'd worked on enough construction contracts to know how to read property records. I spent the next weekend digging through county archives, calling offices, and pulling documents. And what I found made me grin from ear to ear. The Lakeside HOA had been officially dissolved in 1981. The charter was revoked for failure to maintain status as a legal entity. Meaning, they didn't exist anymore. All their current operations were completely illegal. Armed with that, I made my move. On Monday morning, I went straight back to their office. Karen was sitting behind her desk, probably drafting another fine. When she saw me walk in, she smirked. "Back so soon? Ready to settle your debt?" "Actually," I said, dropping a stack of papers onto her desk, "I'm here to let you know you're breaking the law." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me?" "This," I said, tapping the top page, "is a record from the county clerk. The Lakeside Homeowners Association was dissolved over 40 years ago. It doesn't legally exist. Which means every notice you've sent, every threat you've made, it's fraud." Her eyes darted to the papers, then back to me. "That can't be correct." It is," I cut in. "And I already spoke with a lawyer. If you or any of your so-called board members step foot on my property again, I'll have you charged with harassment and fraud." Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. "Oh, and one more thing," I added. "I'm filing a report with the county about your fake HOA activities. They'll be very interested to know you've been extorting homeowners." I turned and walked out before she could respond. I could feel her glare burning into my back. That night, for the first time in weeks, I actually slept peacefully. But peace doesn't last long when someone like Karen feels humiliated. 2 nights later, around midnight, I woke up to flashing lights outside. Red and blue. I rushed to the window and saw 2 sheriff's cars parked in my driveway. I ran outside barefoot, heart pounding. "Sir," one deputy called. "We got a report of illegal occupancy here." I froze. "Illegal what?" "Someone filed a complaint saying you're squatting in a foreclosed property." My jaw dropped. "That's ridiculous. I own this house." I ran back inside, grabbed my purchase papers, and handed them over. The deputy scanned them, frowned, then sighed. "Looks legit to me." "Sorry, sir. Must have been a false report." "Let me guess," I said bitterly. "The caller's name was Karen?" He hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Yeah, something like that." I laughed coldly. "Figures." He gave me a sympathetic look. "We get calls like this sometimes. You've got someone with a grudge. Just keep your paperwork handy." After they left, I sat on the porch staring at the lake. The reflection of the moon shimmered on the water, calm and beautiful. I'd bought this place for peace, but now it was a battlefield. Karen wasn't going to stop. She'd crossed from petty harassment into criminal territory. The next morning, I called the sheriff's department myself. I handed over all the documents proving the HOA was dissolved, plus copies of every letter and notice they'd sent me. The deputy in charge raised his eyebrows. "You've got quite a case here," he said. "Impersonating a legal entity, making false reports, this could lead to serious charges. Good, I said. I want her off my back for good. 2 days later, I got a call. Mr. Reed? This is Deputy Hayes. We paid a visit to Ms. Fields this morning. She didn't take it well. Meaning? Meaning she's under investigation now. She won't be contacting you anymore. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath. For the first time since this mess started, I finally felt the weight lift off my chest. That night, I walked down to the lake, the mansion glowing softly behind me. The water was still, the air cool. I realized something, this wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about standing up to people who think power gives them the right to bully others. I bought that mansion to restore peace, and in the end, that's exactly what I did. The next morning, I saw a "for lease" sign in front of the old HOA office. Karen's SUV was gone. So were the notices, the threats, the fear. Just me, the mansion, and the lake, quiet, calm, and finally mine.